Great Debaters Contest is brought to you by Safaricom M-Pesa.
Welcome to the Kisumu edition of the show. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Nyumbok. We have St. Alex Ayucha and Apondo mix on the motion that is foreign media has unjustly stereotyped Africa. Who will be the victor?
We'll have the first proposer begin. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for having given me this opportunity to propose the subject in discussion today. To begin with, I will say that the foreign media has presented imbalanced news in African continent. First, I want to support it by the following reasons. You find that when we are approaching an election here in African continent, you'll find these foreign medias, they will just come anticipating the negatives that will happen as a result of the election. And so you'll find that they will focus so much in Africa, leaving the other continent. One example is the one that took place currently here in Kenya, where you'll find that in 2007, they came and all what they could present to the world was the bad things that were happening. But to remember, again, it's not only Africa continent, but also in Cuba. You find that after Fidel Castro died, there was an election that was held, and the aftermath of the election was a violence which was caused. So we didn't hear much about it as compared to the African continent. Second to that, I would say that there is misinterpretation of African leaders. Why am I saying so? You'll find that recently Yoweri Kaguta Museveni denied the rule that the West came up with of allowing the gay relationship. And so by denying that one, the West took it as a bad ruler and forgetting the virtues of Africa and the morals of Africa. And so that's why I would say that these people, they indeed, they are not fair and just to Africa. Thank you very much.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
Young leaders have an avenue to which Africa will unshackle itself from the jaws of corruption, ignorance, and discrimination. Awinda Rispa, St. Alex Ayucha. I want to strongly oppose the motion that says foreign media has unjustly stereotyped Africa. First, stereotypes. It is having a fixed idea about something or somebody which may not be true. My first opposing point says Africa has been viewed to have immature democracy. Yes, it is true. First, we find that most countries, like a good example we have in DRC Congo, Mobutu Sese Seko declared himself to be the life president of DRC Congo. And we find that when we define democracy, democracy is a government for the people, by the people, and with the people. So, if it is true that these countries have democracy, then the leaders are the ones who should portray it. Then we also find in Burundi recently, Pierre Nkurunziza refused to leave the office. Why? Because he was the greed that he had for leadership. And it is said that leadership is the foundation of every successful democracy. My second point is Africa has been viewed to be a corrupt continent. Yes, it is true. We find that there are very many corruption cases that are pending, like in our country, Kenya. We have the Golden Bag, the Anglo leasing, and the rest. So, and recently, many cabinet secretaries of Kenya were suspended due to corruption. It is true, Africa is suffering corruption. Then thirdly, we have Africa has been stereotyped to have low standards of education. This is true by the several number of students who go and pursue their education outside Africa. And we also, if we look at the levels of ranking or in terms of ranking the universities, we find that the out-country universities are the ones which are leading. We find Harvard University being at the top. Why don't we have universities like Maseno University, Nairobi University at the top? Yet we claim that we have got high standard of education. So these stereotypes, they are correct and they're right. They're right in whatever they say concerning Africa. Thank you.
We'll now hear rebuttals. Proposers, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to support the motion. The first point that I want to say is that the foreign media, they doubt Africans' capability. In that, you find that they show that Africa is very incapable. For example, in hosting international activities such as sports and other international meetings. You find that most of the meetings or the sports, they occur in those foreign countries. This is because they show that Africa are incapable of maybe hosting such activities. And for example, we can see in Africa, we have got very developed stadiums that those activities can also take place, yet they want to ignore them. Second point, in managing natural disasters, you find that there is flood in Africa. Also, if you can see those the foreign countries, they are also flood those sides, but they want to exaggerate more about Africa as compared to other continents. Otherwise, thank you.
Opposition will now hear your rebuttal. You also have 3 minutes.
Okoth Peter Otieno from St. Alex Ayucha Secondary School, ready to oppose the motion that says that foreign media have unjustly stereotyped Africa. First, I want to say that the stereotype about the insecurity in Africa is a true and evidential case that we cannot counteract. Insecurity, we have agreed that is caused by the internal land defense. Internal land defense in African countries like the Boko Haram of Nigeria, we have the Al-Shabaab in Kenya and Somalia, and we have the xenophobia of South Africa. The second point is the massive butcheries. The massive butcheries satisfy the insecurity in Africa, as we can trace back the Rwandan genocide and South African crisis, South Sudan crisis. The second point is inhuman crimes. The inhuman crimes are associated with assassinations. The assassination, like the 1969 Tomboy assassination and the Jamiem Kariuki assassination of 1975. There is also rampant HIV pandemic. The HIV problem that have arose in Africa is evident and is true. The research that was done by the two African professors and the other two counterparts from America prove that it is true that the rate of HIV spread and the people living with HIV in Africa are more. There is also poor technology. We can see, and as ourselves, we are trying to avoid this, that Africa is only exporting raw materials instead of finished products. The raw materials are of lower price in world market. So there is truly poor technology. And there is dominant gender biasness. In dominant gender biasness, we are seeing that most heads of states and governments in Africa are most of male gender. So we find that females are holding less ranks compared to males. So this dominant gender biasness may make us lag behind in technology and in current trends in gender. Thank you.
Mi weka pesa kwa M-Pesa, kisha nalipa my expenses zangu, kisha natoa do kwa urahisi, double tap kila kitu. Double tap kwa M-Pesa, sihitaji kukaa kwa blackout. Why? Electricity bill, double tap. Kila kitu tu ni double tap.
With M-Pesa, it's just a click of a button away. It's fast, efficient, and easy.
Thumbs up to M-Pesa.
Take part in the M Challenge by sending your short song, rap, or poem about Safaricom M-Pesa on WhatsApp, and you could win 1,000 shillings in Safaricom airtime.
The audience has posed questions to these two teams. They will be responding shortly. The proposers have been asked why they say that Africa has been stereotyped to be unable to host large events, yet the FIFA World Cup was held in South Africa in 2010. And the opposers have been challenged on HIV and AIDS. It's a natural occurrence, yet they say it's only a pandemic in Africa. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes.
Elimboya from Apondo mix. Stereotype means to focus the real image on something or somebody which is not true. And unjustly means you are not fair. It means you are unfair. So my first point is foreign media are exaggerating in things which are happening in Africa more than things which are happening in foreign continents. Let us take an example like HIV/AIDS, which is affecting most people in Africa. But we find that it is also happening in the foreign countries, where many people are being affected by HIV and AIDS. But they are only focusing on Africa more than the other continents. Again, the foreign medias cannot, they are denying African media to access to their medias. This goes that the African cannot express their views through the foreign medias because they are being denied the access to those medias of foreigners. Then the foreign medias are only focusing on the negativism of the extreme events of Africa. Let us take an example like flood, which is happening in Africa, but we are also finding that the flood is happening in China, where most countries in foreign countries are being affected by flood. Thank you.
Opposer number 3, respond to the audience as well.
Oma Quintapio from St. Alex Ayucha Secondary School. I would like by starting by answering the question. Okay, HIV, yes, is a natural pandemic, but it is much spread in Africa, and that's why the foreign countries decided to chip in and bring help to Africans. They brought in things like CDs to help control the rate of the spread of HIV in Africa, and also brought ARVs. That is just a good sign to show us that HIV is more widespread in Africa than in other countries. Okay, I'd like to oppose the motion by saying foreign media justly stereotype Africa. Africa is one continent viewed as overpopulated. This is very true. Take, for example, a country like Nairobi. In a country like Nairobi, as a result of it being overpopulated, there were slums that came up, like the Mathare slum and the Kibera slum. These were slums that came up as a result of Nairobi being overpopulated. Another good example is in South Africa, the Soweto slum. And you will agree with me, if you go to those slums, you'll find them still being overpopulated. People are congested in one place. That's a good show that Africa is truly an overpopulated continent. Another point, Africa is viewed as a poor continent. This is very true. If indeed Africa wasn't poor, then it would have not been depending on the foreign help. Things like the relief food, they're donated by the foreigners to Africans. That's a good show that Africa cannot produce its own food, even to feed its own people. Things like ARVs, they're donated by the Africans, by the foreigners into the African countries. If truly Africa wasn't a poor country, a poor continent, it would be manufacturing its own drugs, even to maintain its own population. Thank you.
Closing statements. Proposers, you have 1 minute.
Okay, what I can say is that indeed the foreign media are unjust. this we just all have to agree that they are unjust, because at the rate at which these people they emphasize activities in Africa as compared to other continents, it is not fair, because you find that all these things happening in Africa continent is as well happening in other continent. So my team together with me, we came up together and strongly support this motion. Otherwise, thank you.
Opposers, you also have 1 minute for your final statements.
Rispa Winda back again. I want to strongly finish by opposing the motion that, as earlier been stated, foreign media has unjustly stereotyped Africa. Let's take this as a correction point, as in, we truly know that a man must be big enough to admit his mistakes, smart enough to profit from them, and strong enough to correct them. From these stereotypes, let us correct these mistakes, because we know that Mahatma Gandhi said, your tomorrow depends entirely on today. If we accept that these things are true, let's correct them. The poor leadership in Africa, let us correct them. So I strongly still oppose the motion that it is unjust for foreign medias to stereotype Africa. Thank you.
To Apondo Mixed, Edwin comes in and you are well read. I think one of the things that you need to work on as a team is your stage presence. But you're well read, you focus a lot on Africa, and I like the comparison that you give, between the coverage of Africa and the coverage of other parts of the world, which then shows us that yes, Africa has been misrepresented by foreign media. But then the rest of the team is not able to pick up that kind of momentum. So you have one strong person and the other two are not as strong as you would have wanted to see. Remember that in a debate, it's not about one person, it's about teamwork. But I think you did very well also in telling us why you think that Africa has been unjustly stereotyped by the foreign media. I think in terms of mastery of language and the mastery of topic and coherency of argument, you people are great. My challenge has been the style and presentation, which is something that you can work on because you already have the substance. All the best to the two schools.
To St. Alex, Ayucha, yes, Awinda. Good mastery of language. I think I really like you in the team. You're very strong, you come very strong, and even come and end in a very strong way. Great speaker, and you're a good team leader, and you maintain the same all across in your submissions, which is good. Peter, you're also a great orator. You come to the stage and you command a presence and your voice. However, some of the examples you give, like for example the gender bias, linking it directly to now foreign media, that's the link that was really missing. But those are very good examples. So it's good to end your points with a link of the motion. Auma as well, good speaker, great examples. Utilize your time well, and I think you'll make a great team. All the best to the two teams.
St. Alex Ayucha, I'll commend you for 3 things. 1, evidence of research. 2, commendable mastery of language. And 3, confidence and sincerity. To the 3 of you, that was commendable presentation, and at the end of the day, the listeners are convinced that foreign media has not stereotyped Africa. Apondo Mixed, just a comment, time utilization and reasoning to the end. Don't pick an idea and then you reason, but you don't conclude. And I call it fallacy of incomplete reasoning. You start an argument, you pick a point, but you don't reason to the end. After your presentation, the listeners still have questions that are not answered. The truth is the 3 of you are learned. The 3 of you researched in a way, but when it comes to execution of the content, that is where there is a problem. So you can still see how you can sit down as a team and help one another in terms of content digestion and content delivery. To the 2 teams, it was fair, but to St. Ayucha, it was impressive.
Apondo Mixed, the judges saw it fit to award you with 62%. Kindly give them a hand. St. Alex Ayucha, the judges gave you 70%, making you our winners.
Congratulations to St. Alex Ayucha, and we tell our wonderful students from Apondo Mixed that the biggest room is the room for improvement. So from all of us here at the Great Debaters Contest, we'd like to thank Safaricom M-Pesa and KBC Channel 1, urge our viewers and our members of the audience to follow us on Twitter at Great Debaters EA. I am Austin Nyambok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. We'll see you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest was brought to you by Safaricom M-Pesa.